Here we have new moon. New moon is when the moon is between the earth and the sun. And if it is in perfect alignment, we call that syzygy. So syzygy is a word that means 3 or more objects in space are in alignment. And usually it is talking about the earth, sun, and moon. And during that time, if these are in perfect alignment, the moon would actually block the light from the sun. And that would create a solar eclipse. So a solar eclipse would happen during a new moon. But it doesn't happen in every new moon because it has to involve a perfect alignment between the earth, sun, and moon. So now we're going to go through the phases of the moon. Now when I do this, pay close attention to the surface of the moon. So in this model, the sun is the lamp, the light. The moon is this styrofoam lollipop, made a moon lollipop that you can make with the styrofoam ball and make it have craters like the moon and then put it on a stick. And then I am going to represent the earth. So the camera is taken from the position that you would see the moon from the earth. So here we go. We're going to go through the phases of the moon, and I am going counterclockwise, starting with new moon. This whole process would take about a month. And as the moon is revolving around the earth, it rotates at the same rate that it revolves. So the moon actually rotates at the same rate that it revolves. So that means as it's revolving, it's rotating. So really we only end up seeing 1/2 of the moon. We never see the other side of the moon. Okay, so here we go. So now, right there, you can see that the right edge of the moon is lit up. We call this phase waxing crescent. Waxing crescent because the term waxing means to brighten up. So think of waxing your car, brightening your car, it gets it shinier. So the waxing phases are getting brighter, and the light is going to be moving from the right to the left. Okay, so now pay close attention to the surface of the moon. Now we're getting even the surface of the moon is getting even brighter. So right now we are at first quarter moon. We call this first quarter moon because we're only really seeing a quarter of the moon's surface. And this is when the right half of the moon is lit up. Technically, it's a quarter of the moon we're seeing, that's why we call it first quarter. Pay close attention to the surface of the moon. Right there, we have waxing gibbous phase. So notice most of the moon is lit up except for the very left edge, which is in shadow. This is called a waxing gibbous phase of moon. Now, I keep going. And tonight, this is what you should see. This is a full moon. So there's no shadow on the moon. Now, once in a while, if we have syzygy, that means the earth, sun, and moon are in alignment, where the moon is in the shadow of the earth. And we call that a lunar eclipse. So a lunar eclipse would happen during the time of a full moon. And a solar eclipse, remember, would happen during a new moon. And now we're going to look at the shadow now It's going to go from right to left. So pay close attention, because if you're not really looking at the surface of the moon, you won't see it. It's a little tricky. So we're going from right to left again, just like we did with the light, but this time the shadow is going to go from right to left. So right about there, we can see the right edge of the moon is in shadow. So the shadowing part, or the shadowing half of the moon's phases, are called the waning phases. Not waxing. Waxing, getting brighter. Waning, getting darker. So this is a waning gibbous moon. Okay, you see the very right edge is in shadow. Okay, now I'm going to keep going. Right about there. It's hard to tell. We're about third quarter moon. So the right half of the moon, or the right quarter, or the right half, when we see the moon, we're technically seeing a quarter of it that's lit up. But the third quarter moon is when the right half of the moon is in shadow. So this is third quarter. Now we are back, getting closer to the sun again. This now is waning crescent moon. The left edge of the moon is lit up. And then we're coming back to a new moon. So there we have a new moon. So if you look at the shadow as I'm moving the moon around, going through the phases of the moon. Okay, new moon, now we're going through waxing phases. Look at that, we're waxing, getting brighter and brighter and brighter. Full moon. Now we're going through waning phases. It's going to get darker, darker, darker. It's darker, 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 and back to the new moon. So the phases of the moon, right here, are determined by the moon's position in relationship to the sun, really. And the phases are what we see from the Earth. If we were to look down or out in space, there are no phases to the moon. The moon is it's always going to be, half of the moon will always be lit up. Okay, if you look at it from space, or just from above the Earth, half of the moon is always lit up. So now I'm going to give you kind of a view of that, although it's hard now because it's not easy to demonstrate. Half of the moon will be in shadow and half of it will be lit up. But as I'm looking overhead, half of the moon is in shadow and half of it is lit up. There are no phases. There are phases because of our position on Earth in relationship to the moon and the shadow that is being created from the sun.